specific sentence of Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eyes. So the sentence that I decided to choose is on page 12, and it's in that first section titled Autumn. And it reads, "So when I think of autumn, I think of somebody with hands who does not want me to die." Just to give a little bit of background at this section in the novel, Claudia comes down with a fever and is ill, and her mom basically is wrapping her up with all these blankets, rubbing Vicks on her chest, and Claudia gets sick in bed, and her mom gets kind of angry with her. Um, I don't know why, but throughout this book, I've consistently come back to this passage, and for a while, I thought it was just because it was something that I vividly remembered happening in the beginning of the book. But after close reading with this passage, I feel like it explains a lot more about the entirety of this book and several different things. I think one, this passage specifically contrasts Claudia and her mother's relationship with Pecola and her parents' relationship in a disturbing way, and it really kind of sets the tone to make you think more about why everything with Pecola happened. And so if we look purely at the diction and word choice of the sentence, you can see that Claudia takes a very strong I think stance right away in terms of the sentence. And she also uses that again when she says I think of somebody with hands. So in both the fairly early parts of the sentence, she uses the words I think and she repeats them, which to me gives her a very strong, powerful voice. And throughout the book, we obviously see a contrast with that strong voice in the sense that Pecola does not even really have any dialogue except for that conversation at the end with her supposed imaginary friend. So that's the first contrast I kind of see between the two characters through this quote. Also, Claudia compares autumn with the hands of her mother, which I find to be kind of interesting. I think in a lot of ways that Toni Morrison was really smart when she chose to kind of divide the book with seasons instead of chapters, just because I feel like using seasons kind of made it seem as if time was really moving at a normal pace as it would be in real life, and also that the events that were happening at a real time scale, and they kind of gave us a better sense as a reader of kind of when things were happening. And I also think those seasons tie in with the fact that the seeds that Frida and Claudia planted never grew. So I think that's kind of another thing that ties in. And also just comparing those two things, I think a lot of times when we have a traumatic event happen in our lives, we associate a time frame with that, so that whenever we're thinking about that event, we automatically remember a certain date, a month that it happened, the year. It just is something that happened. So I think that's interesting to put in there as well. And obviously, the fact that she uses the word hands, I feel like throughout this book, people's movements of their body, their stances, how they carry themselves have been a really big theme just in their attitudes towards other people and how other people feel about them. And so in this sense, I think that Claudia was almost scared of her mother's hands or fearful of her mother's hands because her mother's hands were so quickly in trying to do everything she could to make her daughter feel more comfortable while she was ill, that it almost kind of scared Claudia in a way. And I think, in a sense, a mother's hands are very rough. They're very strong. They have work shown on them through calluses and different things. So I think Toni Morrison using hands in this passage is also very interesting. And then clearly the last part of the sentence where it says, "who does not want me to die." Clearly Claudia's mother has that sense of love in her where she loves her daughter. She doesn't want her daughter to be sick. There's a whole aspect of, is that same love shown in this relationship between Claudia and her mother? Is that the same kind of relationship that Pecola and her mother have? And that's where I draw the contrast, because no, Pecola's mother beat her after she found out she was having a child and she was raped. So it's just that idea that while Claudia's mom's hands are tied to living, Pecola's mother's hands are tied to hurt, heartache, death, despair. helplessness. So I just really drew a lot of contrast, and I just kept coming back to this passage. I just think it's a really powerful stance. Um, and you think that it would take something monumental as someone being immensely sick, which obviously in Claudia's case is what's going on, or in Picola's case, Picola was raped, for an adult figure such as their mothers to stand up for them. But only in Claudia's case does her mom stand up for her. Picola's mom never stands up for her. And I just kind of think that automatically shows and makes me ask the question, how do people, and in this situation, someone's parents, abandon their children so effortlessly as if they didn't give life or birth to this amazing human being? And throughout this book, it's been a struggle with me to understand because it's just unfathomable to me. And it makes me feel uncomfortable just because, like, in my own personal life experiences, like, my parents have always been there for me, and so have my mother. And Picola's, they're just nowhere there for her. They're not there for her at all. And I think when we're children, you know, you're innocent and you're young and you make mistakes. And a lot of times you don't know your actions, but you're constantly taught from a young age that you're supposed to believe and trust adults that are in your life. And when we look up to these adults in these institutions, in some cases that we're a part of, they can be our biggest failures. These adults can fail us. They can disappoint us the most out of anyone in our lives. And I think in this case, clearly Picola's parents disappointed her. They weren't there for her. And this passage here shows that contrast between Claudia's relationship with her mother, because Claudia's mother was there for her and she did care about her when she was sick. And I just think that shows a lot.